Did you know our next virtual aesthetic marketing seminar is happening May 16th and 17th? We are bringing you 2 days of no nonsense, straight to the point strategies that are working right now in spa so that you can gain the time freedom and financial freedom that you want and deserve. If you're already enrolled in a program at Addo Aesthetics, your ticket is totally free. And if not, you can still join in on the fun for only $97. Head on over to the link in bio on our Instagram page at Addo Aesthetics to get more info and your ticket today. Hello, my dears. Daniela here, and welcome to the Spa Marketing Made Easy podcast. This episode is brought to you by Addo Aesthetics, the #1 coaching company for aesthetic professionals wanting to step into the role of spa CEO. And if social media is important to you, and I'll just give you a hint, it absolutely should be if you're a spa owner, you're going to want to grab a pen and paper and take some serious notes, because I have Brendan Kane, can't even believe I'm saying that, on the show. And while his name might not be familiar to you, I bet you've heard of MTV. I bet you've heard of Taylor Swift. I bet you heard of Rhianna. All clients of Brendan's who he has helped with social media strategy. So when I think about Brendan, I've read both of his books. He has 1 million followers, which he did a little experiment and wrote a book about it. He was able to get 1 million followers in 30 days by using his strategies. And he has a newer book called Hook Point, really, really good. And it talks about getting the attention in the first 3 seconds that someone sees your post. So he's got a lot of really just phenomenal information around social media and how to really stand out as a business. So let me do a quick read of his bio, and then we'll jump right into that interview. So Brendan is an outside of the box thinker, speaker, and author who empowers brands to scale by helping them stand out and beat competition in crowded and oversaturated markets. He's the author of the international best-selling book, 1 Million Followers, and the newly released Hook Point, How to Stand Out in a 3-Second World, as well as the CEO and founder of Hook Point Agency. Brendan has worked with hundreds of individuals and brands providing business and digital strategy for more than 15 years, including MTV, Taylor Swift, Rhianna, and many others. So Brendan definitely knows what he's talking about. He's got some really insightful points. Grab your pen and paper, and without further ado, let's go ahead and play that interview. Hello, Brendan. Welcome to the Spa Marketing Made Easy podcast. I'm so excited and honored to have this conversation with you today.
Yeah, it's a true pleasure to connect with you and everybody that's tuning in for this.
So you are a best-selling author. You're known for getting 1 million followers on your account in 30 days. You've got the 1 million followers book. You've got Hook Point, which was great, by the way. How did you get into the world of social media? How did you start down this path?
Yeah, I actually started all the way back in 2005. So I've been at it since the Friendster and MySpace days. And initially I got started because I was going to film school and I wanted to become a film producer and really wanted to get to understand business at a deeper level, and just realized they don't teach you anything about business in film school. So I figured the best way to really learn about business is start your own. And the most cost efficient way at the time, and it still holds true today, is to start online companies. So while I was going to college, I was just learning and experimenting of how to tap into different traffic sources and things of that nature. And then when I moved to Los Angeles in 2005 to pursue a career in film, I just realized that saying I wanted to be a film producer was not a strong hook point to stand out and grab attention with studio executives, directors, producers, and even actors at the high level. So I really had to take a step back and analyze, okay, what is the strong hook point? What is the best way to grab the attention? And I just could see that we were spending tens of millions, in some cases, hundreds of millions of dollars on a single piece of content. And then we needed hundreds of millions of people around the world to know about the single piece of content in a matter of months. And I just went to the heads of the studio and said, hey, I learned how to tap into these different traffic sources for a fraction of the cost for television and print and radio, the ways that we were traditionally advertising. I can tap into these sources for a fraction of the cost, or in some cases, no cost at all. For example, like I did the first ever YouTube influencer campaign back in like 2006, 2007. So I started getting deeper and deeper into the social space and the digital space. And I just found that was more kind of rewarding than working within the corporate structure of the studio system. So I just continued down that path.
So for those that may not know or understand, can you give your definition of a hook point, of the thing that's getting the attention?
Yeah, so there's three core pillars to a successful hook point. It's one, how do you grab attention? And typically we have less than 3 seconds to grab that attention because of the world that we live in. If you don't grab that attention in the first few seconds, you get lost in the noise. Mm-hmm. Because the reality of the situation that we live in today is we go back pre-social media. Maybe there's 1 million content creators on the planet reaching the masses because you had to go through television, a Madison Avenue agency, newspapers, magazines. You had to pay big minimums or you had to have connections. So it wasn't readily available to everybody. But with social media, if you fast forward to today in 2022, there's now 4 billion content creators on the planet pushing 200 billion messages into the world every single day. So it becomes critically important when we have to grab that attention. Because if we don't grab that attention, we get lost in that sea of noise. But it's not just about grabbing attention. The second core pillar is holding the attention. So what is the story that we're telling to effectively get our value across to the audience that we're trying to reach? And then, because we don't want attention with no substance, because with no substance, it doesn't really mean anything. Grabbing attention or going viral for the sake of it just is kind of meaningless if we can't hold that attention. In addition, as we move to the third core pillar, it's how do we monetize that attention? Because if it's not playing to our underlying business goals and objectives, then it doesn't really mean much to us. So we need to effectively monetize it. Now, that doesn't mean that every piece of content should be selling something, but there should be an underlying business strategy that plays in to all of the content that we're creating. So again, the hook point is about how do we grab that attention, how do we hold that attention, and effectively, how do we monetize that attention?
What's your advice for small business owners who, to grab the attention? I heard you in an interview say, look at your competitors and what they're doing. But when you go onto the algorithm, you could be, someone could see like The Rock working out and could see, some very professional piece of content being made, and then comes up your post, right? So how do we as small business owners really understand and capture that pattern disruption and be able to compete with not only other spa owners in our area, but with the noise that's going on in social media?
Yeah, so you mentioned the algorithms. Let's first tackle that because there's a lot of myths about the algorithms. One of the biggest myths is they're suppressing your reach so you pay for it, which is just simply not true, because if that was the case, nobody would go viral. So the algorithms have fundamentally one goal and one goal only, and that is retention. It's like, how do we keep people on the platform longer so that we can serve more ads? Because that's their fundamental business model. So what they're looking for is content that first stops the scroll, because if you don't stop the scroll, you have no ability to gain retention. But then once you have been able to stop that scroll, how long are you holding that attention? If you can master those two things, that's where virality takes place. That's where you can get massive reach, massive engagement. Now, the second part is understanding, again, that there's a lot of competition out there, understanding the average user behaviors. When they go into social media, they're consuming other content. They go to their main feed, and like you said, they see The Rock working out, they see Kevin Hart telling a joke, the latest Netflix trailer, or Kim Kardashian talking about fashion, and then your content comes up. So how are you effectively able to stop that scroll to say, hey, this piece of content is worth exploring, worth diving in deeper? Now, does that mean you have to have the same production value as a Netflix? No, because you see like UGC videos of cats and dogs, or people doing stunts, or even just certain coaches or people out in the marketplace that are effectively to do that. So your first job is to understand the pattern of social content so that you can disrupt that pattern. Because the minute you convey a message in the same way as something they've already seen, they're going to move on. So like, let's just take meditation, for example. If we're doing a video on meditation, meditation's been around for thousands of years. If you type it into Google, you're going to get billions of results. So if you start creating videos saying the same thing as everybody else, like meditation is the key to releasing stress and anxiety, or the key to contentment or happiness, the person scrolling through their feed, basically, they may see that as the context of your video, and automatically in their head, they're like, I already know what this is going to say, even if you have a completely different perspective on the matter. So it's first introducing the concept and contextualizing what you want to say in a way that's completely unique, completely different. So you had mentioned my first book, 1 Million Followers, How I Built a Massive Social Audience in 30 Days. You type social media into Google, there's going to be billions of results. So I knew I needed to have a hook point that would stand out and grab attention. So that's where the 1 million followers concept came in. Another big mistake people make is those first few seconds are super critical to success based on what we talked about, the algorithms. So if you start off a video by saying like, hey, everybody, well, you just wasted 2 seconds doing that. In addition, you're misunderstanding the purpose of social media. Social media is not a one-to-many platform. Social media is a one-to-one platform, because when you're engaging with social media, you're doing it with one person on the other side of the screen. So really take and pay attention to how people that are going viral that are leveraging those first few seconds to set the stage to say, this video is worth looking at. This video is worth engaging with.
So leading with the result, right? So leading with something with your book, 1 Million Followers, you had said that's what the people want is 1 million followers. But what I'm actually teaching in the book is how to do the test, like all of the things that go into the end desired result, right? So if you're, am I repeating that correctly?
Yeah. So results is one way of doing it. So we'll break down 1 million followers and then we can get to other ways. Is one of the areas that people often struggle with when they're promoting their service or their brand or any content is they know their level of expertise so well. Mm-hmm. So they often lead with what people need instead of what people want.
Yeah, that's what it's sell them what they want, give them what they want, sell them what they need, or vice versa.
Exactly.
But to get the attention, right? That's what you're saying is the.
And you know what, again, we're not talking about misleading people. So with the concept of 1 million followers, I had accumulated all this knowledge over 15 years of doing social media, like how to tap into strategic partnerships, the psychology of content, how to create shareable content, strategic alliances and partnerships. But if I would have led with any of those, it wouldn't have the same impact as 1 million followers. So I leverage what people want, which is follower growth, to say, hey, if you really want follower growth, these are the things that you need to learn. So there's a huge distinction when we're grabbing attention, both online and offline, of, again, leading with what people want and say, okay, if this is what you want, then these are the things that you need to be able to do to accomplish that goal or to accomplish the thing that you're going after. But it doesn't have to lead necessarily with a result. I would say oftentimes paid acquisition, paid media works really well with leading with that. But we've done just like interesting visuals, coming onto the screen. Like my creative director came from a company where they were doing 1 billion views a month off of food videos. And if you look at those top-down food videos, they'll slide a plate onto the screen in a unique way, or they'll do something unique in the first second. So it doesn't necessarily have to be the outcome that they're getting. It could just be an interesting visual or interesting way to set the stage. Some people do performance-based. I'll give you an example. We did a video that we found this crazy ad, this Asian ad with these guys. It's starts off with these guys interlocked with their arms, and they're like a bird poops on their face, and they're like shaking, and all these crazy things are going. So we saw this, and we're like, wow, this is really unique. So what we did is we put a meme card, the text on top that says, "You'll never guess what this ad is for." So what is happening there from a visual standpoint of grabbing attention is you have this unique visual that's happening. You have no idea what's going on. And then you have this text on the top saying, "You'll never guess what this ad is for." So what it's doing is we're grabbing people's attention in those first few seconds. And then we're setting the stage for retention, what the algorithms are looking for, by saying, "You'll never guess what this ad is for." And you don't find out what the ad is for until the end of it. So that video, I think it's over 10 million views at that point. It was just a simple play on grabbing attention and then holding that attention for as long as possible.
So what is your thought process on, obviously grabbing the attention and holding the attention is incredibly important. Do you put a level of importance on the type of medium that's used? For example, right now, Reels is the big thing with Instagram. But so do you feel like short form video or static post or regular video or stories, does any of that matter as much as creating a piece of content that's actually going to capture and hold their attention for those 3 seconds?
Well, it's the most important thing is grabbing attention and holding attention. It doesn't matter which platform or format on that platform that you're using. That's what the algorithms want to see. And I just want to say that when we talk about holding attention, we definitely need to hold it past that 3 seconds, because 3 seconds is not long enough to really trigger that. But are there benefits like Reels becomes, there's Reels, YouTube Shorts, both of them were created to compete against TikTok. So there's a huge emphasis for them. And typically when these new features launch, one, they are going to push them a little bit harder, but two, because it's new, less people are creating content for that format. So there's less competition, but that doesn't dilute the emphasis on grabbing attention and holding attention. Another thing that's really important is a lot of people talk about frequency, like you need to be posting every day or several times a day. There was a point in time in social media when there's less people on it where that did work. But because the algorithms have billions of pieces of content to choose from, that no longer is the case. So we really heavily focus on quality over quantity. Because again, if you're diluting your resources, your energy, your effort, just to put content out there, number one, typically you're not going to get good at grabbing attention, holding attention, because you're just focusing on just churning out as much as possible. But more importantly, you're not learning from why something works, learning why something doesn't work, and applying those learnings to the next piece of content and to the next piece of content. So yes, there are benefits to using a Reels or a YouTube Shorts or things like that as they get introduced into the ecosystem, but the core fundamental principles stay the same.
Where do you suggest a small business owner learns about these types of things? Is there a certain point that certain amount of time they should be investing in their own content? Is there a certain time that they should be hiring an agency? How do you suggest going about managing social media?
Yeah, it's a great question. Unfortunately, just hiring people typically doesn't solve the problem because they don't understand the nuanced details of creative. And when we talk about grabbing attention and holding attention, it's obviously very simple. You got to do these two things and you'll be successful, but it's not necessarily easy. So it just depends on the level you want to play at and the discipline that you're focused on. Because there's two aspects of social. There's the organic side, and then there's the paid side. Both offer massive value, and both have their pros and cons and their challenges. But to me, the way that I have built my career, the way that I've built my brand, and the way that we're helping and supporting businesses is by training people in this model. Because if you don't fundamentally understand it, at least at a base level, then how are you going to know the right company to hire? When we work with clients, we're typically training their team if they have one, or we're really understanding their goals and challenges. And then we have a network of specific people that we've trusted and vetted. Because organic, like I could probably point to 2 agencies that I would trust, but those agencies are operating at the highest levels, like working with multi-billion-dollar corporations. So, I mean, we've seen this over and over again in this challenge that we just spent the past 7 months building a training program in a viral content engineering process that we developed that has over 50 billion views and 100 million followers so that people can get that base understanding. But I think that from a small business owner perspective, the first thing is, what are the goals for social media? Like, what do you want social media to do? And I don't mean views and engagement. I mean, that works if you're an influencer, but if you're a small business that's selling a product,
their spas are wanting to get clients in to get services.
Yeah.
So awareness.
So understanding, okay, I'm going to invest X into social media, whether I'm doing it myself, putting that into paid ads, hiring a contractor agency, hiring a paid media company, and associating a dollar amount that you expect to get in return. And then holding your teams accountable over a short period of time to generate those results.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're trying to get customers, I often find that it's better to start with paid social, because you can pay for that reach. You don't have to worry necessarily about the algorithms, and you can track your results immediately. Okay, I spent $1 and I made $3, or I spent $1, I made $0. I spent $1, I made 25 cents. Like, that tells you right away whether or not that avenue is working for you. So it's really getting a fundamental of what your goals are as a business and holding people accountable. And when I say holding people accountable, it doesn't mean saying, oh, you guys are doing a bad job. It means, is it working? And if it's not working, going and talking with the team that you're working with and saying, hey guys, this isn't working to the numbers that we need for our business. How do we get this back on track? It gives you a lot of clarity of, is this working? Is this not working? So that you can adjust quickly.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And I feel like ads are such an art and a science, because it is. You've got to come up with the creative, capture the attention, and then understand the reach and all of that. But so often business owners will do one campaign and say, oh, ads don't work for me, and so I'm just going to stop. So really giving yourself, doing the learning to understand and test different avenues within ads, I think is super important.
Yeah. And I love the word that you use, science. It is science. Like, our whole viral content engineering process is applying the scientific method to creativity, to this medium of social media. Because the interesting thing is, like, when we look at science, like, we've worked for some of the top vitamin supplement companies in the world. If you're developing a supplement, a vitamin supplement, you're developing a cure for a disease, what do? You leverage centuries of data to inform the decisions that you're making. Mm-hmm. Yet when it comes to creating content, we throw it all out the window. We don't use any data or anything to inform our decisions. We just want to be original, or we just want to create the idea that comes to our head. When in reality, there's millions of data points available to us for absolutely free. So organic, like, a huge part of our process is research. We look at our competitors, and oftentimes I will say competitors will tell you what not to do, not what to do, because I would say close to 99% of people are struggling to make social media successful for them. Like you said, ads aren't working, organic's not working, because it's hard. It's a hard game to play, like anything in life. Like, even the spa owners that we're communicating with, I bet if we talk to each one of them and say, hey, is creating a spa business easy? You would say, no, it's challenging, like anything. So that's where applying this scientific method to this, really diving into the data, is really helpful and informative. This training
that you guys created, is this for small business owners, or is this something that you're doing for a larger? I know you've worked with some really big names in the industry, and But do you do these trainings for smaller businesses?
Yeah, we work with companies that are pre-revenue all the way up to 30 billion a year, because the interesting thing is the underlying fundamental process stays the exact same. And the other fundamental flaw that we see in social media and a lot of the information or agencies or just free advice oftentimes gets outdated very quick. Because of all of these changes that happen with social media, new platforms, new formats, like you mentioned, Reels or YouTube Shorts or TikTok comes on the scene, or an algorithm changes. And then everybody's like, oh my God, what I did before isn't working. So the process that we have is deeply rooted in research. So let's just say a new platform comes on the scene or the algorithm completely shifts. Well, now we have a process that we can just start researching again, who's doing well with this change, who's not doing well, and understanding why it's working, why it's not working, and then apply those changes from the learnings of other people that oftentimes are far more successful than us, that can inform us on what ideas should we be producing, what content we should be producing. So that's kind of where we want that fundamental part of the research. And it's just amazing. So many people in social media, even like people that have agencies, that just don't go through this process. And they're just creating ideas based off of what worked a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or maybe even what worked last week. And then they just keep relying on that. And then when a change comes, they don't know how to adjust. Another powerful tool that I recommend to everybody, and it's completely free, is the Facebook ad library. You can just go to Google, you can type in Facebook ad library, you can search any brand or any page. And if they're actively running ads, you can see the exact ads are running. You can click on the button to see the landing page. You can see how they're generating leads, how they're generating sales. You can see the email sequence if you actually sign up, see the communication. Unfortunately, they don't tell you the performance of the ad, but they give you so much insight for free that you can leverage to inform your decisions going forward.
I love that. I love that. So where can people learn more about you, follow you, learn about your agency, all of those things?
Yeah, they can go to hookpoint.com, which gives more information. We have a deck that people can download as a resource, a video. They can even schedule a call with our team there. And also a free resources if you go to my website, brendanjkane.com. We have a newsletter you can sign up for, a blog with a ton of free content that dives deeper into this. And then also, Instagram is a great way to connect as well.
Perfect. We'll include all those links below this episode. You guys be sure to check it out. Brendan's information, it's so interesting. I've studied so much about social media, trying to learn how this works. And Brendan, your information is so different than what everyone else teaches. And it just made so much sense to me in talking about the science and the strategy with it. So you're doing great work. You don't need me to tell you that, but I really appreciate the work that you're putting out into the world to help small business owners grow through social media. So thanks for being on the show.
No, it was a pleasure to connect with you and everybody that tuned into this.